DJ, how did you find Carnivore?
Hi, Dave. Thanks for having me and thanks for having your show. Wow. Recently, you had a guest on, and she said that there was a bunch of puzzle pieces of her life. And that really resonated with me because getting to carnivore was a whole lot of puzzles, pieces. And I told Kyle, who's my husband, I said, I can't put the puzzle together because I don't, before I didn't have any straight pieces. So it was always just a convoluted mess. This is not the first time that I have taken back my health. It's the third time. I'm going to go back to my childhood a little bit. I'm 60, gonna be 62. So I'm 61. And I've always had from I swear, I think my mom gave me Coke in a straw when I was a baby because I've always had a crazy addiction to sugar, all things sugar. I couldn't go to a friend's house without obsessing about the fact that their families had like oh, closets, it seemed like, full of things in boxes and things in plastic and the cookies and licorice and whatever. And I had an aunt who had a lot of sugar in her house, and I just always wanted to eat. The other kids would want to go play, and I'd be like, no, how can they turn it down? How can they turn down? You kids want a treat? Well, I didn't want to turn it down. So that was my whole life. And it was kept under control because I had a dad who, while he was a big drinker, he didn't buy into the whole kids should have sugar thing. It annoyed him that everybody's other kids were having sugar. So he kind of limited us. And that, I thought wrongly, was what was driving my constant desire for sugar, was that I was always denied sugar. I thought that at the time, but I no longer think that way. So my entire life, up until my teens, sugar, sugar, sugar. I didn't have a weight problem because I was very athletic. I loved anything outdoorsy. I was really kind of a tomboy, my motorcycle, out trampolining, gymnastics, every sport. And then I went to work at the local airport, and I was refueling aircraft. I got my pilot's license when I was in high school, but I also had the keys to the candy machine. And I had enough money. I made really good money. And I had my own car, and I was independent. And I ate a lot of candy and a lot of drive-through, Burger King, whatever, standard American diet, except for at home. My mom was kind of a meat eater. She did throw in the occasional salad, but I wasn't really into vegetables, so I just would pick at it. Luckily, I never really had a thing for until I got, to my 20s for vegetables, and I really never had a thing there. I just did it because I thought it was what a good mom does. I thought, oh, I have to feed my kids vegetables, so I'm going to learn how to eat them. And so I would just eat them steamed. My mom always gave us a vegetable in a can or a salad. Anyway, we were meat eaters. And then I started putting on weight and started to feel bad in my teens. I fractured my spine when I was 17, 16, 17. I slipped off of a ladder and landed on the ramp, jet fuel spraying everywhere. Well, unbeknownst to me, I fractured my thoracic 8, 9, and 10 vertebrae, but I didn't know it. So I, from that point on, had back pain, which I didn't know was inflammation. Pain is inflammation. I just recently learned that in 2016. So I'm 17, it's early 80s, 1981-ish. Um, that summer, 1981, my dad, the big drinker guy who didn't do the sugar thing, I look back at his pictures now and notice he was really inflamed. That whole moon face thing. Well, he was playing softball and he died of a massive heart attack playing softball. So that was the second thing that pretty much, third thing really, having my independence, fracturing my spine, and then losing my dad, all that right in that same time period changed the course of how I thought about food and life and pain. So I was constantly in pain from that. And I thought it was just for my fracture, but it was the inflammation. The doctors gave me medicine, but I wouldn't take it because I heard that it hurts your kidneys. So I'm like, I'm not taking that. I'll deal with the pain. Fast forward, I'm in my 20s. I'm starting to have children, weight's creeping on, pain's there. I'm always like this nagging stomach ache and back pain, which I attributed, of course, to my spinal injury. And I have the children. I go through a divorce. I get into my 30s. I go to college for the first time, and I'm in a theater program, and I'm playing this troll queen in a children's show. I'm playing Helga, the queen of the trolls. And during rehearsal one night, my director said to me, "You better watch it. You're going to get typecast." So I'm like, I don't know what that means. Go home to my phone. That was before cell phones. I called my mom and I said, "Hey, what does this mean, this typecast thing?" And she goes, "Well, I guess it means you're going to start getting all those roles, whatever you're playing." So my brain said, "Well, I'm playing all the fat girl roles then. And I don't want to play any fat girl roles." Sorry if I've offended anybody, but I just went on the only eating plan that I could see at the time, and that was the whole low fat, lean meat craze. I read a book called Stop the Insanity, I think. And I went home and I took everything out that I thought had fat in it. I didn't really even know what fat was. I didn't pay attention in biology class. I didn't pay attention. I remember hearing about carbohydrates, but I'm like, I have no idea what a carbohydrate is. If you would have given me a test, I wouldn't have known. Just like Kelly Hogan said, she didn't really know either. She had to go home and ask her dad. I'm the same person. I had no idea. So anyway, I'm dropped. Right at that point, I just started eating leans. Like everybody on your show says, of course I lost weight because I quit eating Burger King and a bag of Funyuns and 6 Snickers in a week or each night or whatever. So I quit eating that, dropped 105 pounds, went from a 22 at that point to a 8-ish, 5-ish. Felt great, felt amazing. Still had pain, still had food noise. That with like within weeks of my second marriage, I fell in love, make the love of my life, fall in love. My mom says to me one night, you know, if you don't learn how to cook better than a boiled piece of chicken breast and some kind of steamed broccoli, you're never going to keep a man. Why? That would set right in my head. So I started to learn how to cook pasta and cheesy things and stopped cooking stir fry and started cooking meat and potatoes. And really, I didn't know how to cook steak. So we didn't eat steak. We just ate a lot of chicken, a lot of lean chicken. Of course, the weight crept on, carb creep, everything crept up. I just went right back to myself, the old self. Fast forward to 2016, and I, for some reason, had to go to the emergency room. Now, in between that time, I had a gallbladder taken out that didn't need to be taken out. When he took it out, he's like, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with your gallbladder." I'm like, "Oh, well, sorry." I'm like, "Okay, that's good. Well, then why
Well,
that
can
doesn't
you put it back then?
wouldn't that be awesome?" No. So I got a gallbladder taken out, thinking all these stomach issues got to be from my gallbladder. It wasn't my gallbladder. I didn't know what it was. I kept going to the doctors, and finally I just gave up going to doctors because I was never feeling any better. Then I started in my 40s. I started to get what now I know to be arthritis, osteoarthritis. I thought I had what they would term fibromyalgia because you couldn't touch my skin without pain. And I was constantly in pain. And I bared, I went through the pain. I didn't let anybody know on the outside I'm in pain. But by the time I got home, my poor husband and my kids they had like 10% of me because I was a teacher. I gave 110% at work and been medically being what now I know is metabolically sick. I put the weight back on, ballooned right back up I'm 5'4" and a half. And at that time, I probably ballooned. Once I hit 260 pounds, I always stopped weighing. So I know that I was higher than 260 because I just kept gaining and gaining. 216 comes, I have to go to the emergency room, and I don't know if that was that first migraine. I can't remember. But I remember he gave me 800 milligram ibuprofen, the kind that you get from a pharmacist. And I took one, which would be completely against my norm. I would have to be, in my family, I tell them, I don't want to go to the emergency room unless I'm bleeding to death, my heart stopped beating, or, those kind of things. We don't go to the emergency room. We don't do doctors. So I took that ibuprofen, and the next day I didn't even know what I was really taking. I didn't know that an ibuprofen was an anti-inflammatory drug. I didn't understand what that was. So I step out of the house in the morning and I can walk. And I'm like, I looked to my husband and I said, "How is it that I don't have any pain? What's wrong?" And he said, "Well, you took an ibuprofen, you dummy." Ma, that's what anti-inflammatory means. So you mean it takes away your pain? He goes, "Well, yeah, inflammation's pain." I said, "Oh, okay." So then I started on the trail of what's inflammation? How do I get rid of inflammation? At that point, the doctor also told me that something was wrong with my thyroid. And they wanted to do some $10,000 test at the University of Miami. This is when I live in South Florida. They want to give me a $10,000 test. And I said, I would rather die than take a $10,000 test. I would take the death. I'm not going to do your $10,000 test. Don't even know what it was. I said, I'm going to heal my thyroid on my own. So I started, I think it was Jason Young, no, Jason Fung. He wrote the book about inflammation, right? So I get the book, I read it, and I'm like, I'm inflamed. I'm going to do something about it. So I went on a ketogenic diet then in 2016, June 23rd. And the reason I went on it, committed to it, I was home one night, and this was June 22nd, and I ate, this is so embarrassing. That's your audience is gonna be like, oh my gosh. So I ate so many Lucky Charms cereal in one night that I could feel my heart just driving its way out of my chest. And I couldn't breathe. And I'm like, I need an ambulance. That's how bad I thought I was. But I just prayed to God and said, if I wake up in the morning, Lord, I'm going to give this sugar up because I know that sugar is what's doing it. And I just don't want to admit it. So I wake up in the morning. I didn't die. I was too embarrassed. I didn't want to go to the emergency room and told them that I overdosed on Lucky Charms. So I woke up in the morning, thankful to God. I give God all the glory for this. I'm a Christian, so everything, all of these puzzle pieces of my childhood, my losing my dad, all of those things happen for a reason for me, for people. So I believe the Lord does things, even some of those kinds of things, to put you in the path he wants you in. And he wanted me in this path right here. I got on the ketogenic diet, tried to keep my carbs below 20% or whatever it is, 20 points. I can't even remember. I did really well. And in 2 years, I lost somewhere around the 90-pound mark. But the food noise never went away. I was still eating dirty carnivore, no, sorry, dirty keto a lot. I mean, I don't even have to say it. Your audience knows. If for the newbies, all the keto treats, they're the enemy, especially if you have food noise. So I lose the 90 pounds. I'm feeling really good, but still got a lot of food noise, still got inflammation. Moved to Montana in 2018, fighting it tooth and nail. In that time period, I had fallen in love with all things Jordan Peterson. So you knew Jordan Peterson's probably going to come up in your conversation with most people, which naturally led to Michaela Peterson. And I hear her say that she cured her childhood RA or reversed it with an all meat diet. And I thought, like everybody else, I've heard this thousands of times, literally on your channel, people saying, I thought that's got to be nuts. I'm going to get scurvy. I'm going to die of a heart attack. Nobody can eat that much meat without clogging their arteries, blah, blah, blah. The whole paradigm just played in my head like a bad play. But it sat there. And the Lord just kept tapping on my shoulder and he just kept saying, you got to consider that carnivore. You got to consider that meat diet. And I'm like, no, that's just idiots do that. That's for crackpots. So I kept trying to go back to keto, but it kept failing. Then COVID hit. And at this point, the inflammation just exploded because I was home every day, online teaching, 2 feet from my refrigerator. So every time there was a break in my classroom protocols, I would just peel up for the whatever chip. And Kyle, who's my husband, he got into making pastries during COVID because we were bored. So he was making these French pastries and And I just can't have one. If you just, it's six. I got to have six. I got to figure out how to have a dozen or half a dozen. And that just exploded. The inflammation got so bad. Now I'm at the point, we're just in COVID 2020, still in lockdowns, and I can't move my hands anymore. My hands won't open and close right. I have a feeling in my lower legs like I'm wearing tube socks. You know, back in the day in the 70s and 80s when we wore tube socks and they were tight, I felt like I was wearing tube socks. I knew it was inflammation. I knew it was neuropathy. I'd been studying enough to know I was getting sharp pains that would, like electrical impulses that would come out of my bottoms of my feet and shoot out the bottoms of my feet and my hands. I started to have, I had this really, this has been my whole life. So now I'm kind of getting into my symptoms that drove me to carnivore. My entire life, I had a sensitive scalp. I thought it was genetic. You know, I used to think if it wasn't caused by my fracture of my spine, it was genetic. It's because my grandma had a sensitive head. My mom had a sensitive head. No, my grandma was addicted to sugar. My mom was addicted to sugar, and I was addicted to sugar. And every time I overdo sugar, I had this burning in my scalp, which was pretty much all the time. And it was red. So that was always inflamed. I had sleep apnea started, so I had to have a CPAP. I had, I didn't go to the doctor anymore. I quit doing that after the whole thyroid thing. So I didn't really go to the doctor. If I did have to go for something emergency like, they would always be like, your blood pressure is rising and and I'm like, yeah, I know my blood pressure is rising. Look at the size of me. Why wouldn't my heart be working hard? And they never talked to me about diet, which I would have been, oh, and I would ask them, is there something I can do? Can you give me something that I don't want to take a pill, but is there some advice you can give me that will help me get back to eating right? And they never had anything to say. So I just kind of ignored everything. So my blood pressure was always rising. My heart rate was rising. I had the neuropathy. I have a list of ailments in I keep a spreadsheet. I started carnivore on January 1st this year, 2025, after watching Michaela. And so right in in 20, so I thought about carnivore for about 4 years before I did it, trying to get it on and off, on and off, and on and off keto. Never could do it. Then I had a doctor's appointment or an eye appointment. And my doctor says to me, he always comes in, he's always really kind. And always says, how you doing? And it was the first time that God said to me, tell him the truth. I may not be able to talk about this. So he said, how you doing? And I said, I'm not good. I can't see anymore. I fall down all the time. I can't sleep anymore. I'm 60 years old and I'm going on 90. I can't walk more than 33 steps without so much pain that I can't even take the mail to I'm worried about losing my job because I can't walk anymore. I'm thinking I got MS or something because I can't walk. I can't use my hands. I can't use a stapler. I can't see anything. Everything's an absolute storm. I unloaded on him and he stopped and he looked right and he looked left and he leaned in and he said, I started this thing called the carnivore diet. Have you ever heard of it? And I just sat back and took my breath away. And I said, I've been thinking about carnivore for years. You do the carnivore diet, but I never met anybody with skin who did the carnivore diet. So I didn't think it was a real thing. Because Michaela Peterson in my mind and Jordan Peterson, they're like, oh, they're way up there. They're not like ordinary people. They're not even three-dimensional to me. So I said, gosh, I've been studying this and I want to do it, but I'm scared. He goes, oh, I've been on it now almost 2 years and I just love it. He said, it's a game changer. I said, well, why do you do it? Because you don't look like you have any problems. He said, no, I was really starting to struggle with arthritic pain. And he said, I kept putting on weight and I couldn't control it. So he went through his whole story. I said, well, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it January 1st. So I went home, told my husband, I'm doing carnivore January 1st, whether you like it or not. And I'm going to be obsessed. So you're going to have to be along for the ride. bless his heart. He's my cook. He's amazing now at cooking a steak. And he does it with me. And when he's home, he does carnivore with me. But then when we're out, then he does all these, like he'll do a diet pup, he'll have bread. And January 1st, I went on it. And I kept very good records. So I have all my very good records. And I have this many journals from January 1st. Every one of your shows, I make notes. I did the first 30 days. I recorded everything the first 30 days. Everything. So uh, I could tell you within the pounds, I did my blood glucose, I did everything. I saw somebody recently, you had a pilot on. He works for the major airlines and he talks about he's a data nerd. I'm a data nerd too. I'm a writer, so I write everything. Journal everything. And I just kept track and now I'm down. Today I checked, I think I'm 316 days in. I have an app that tells me how many days I'm in. I was only going to do it for 30 days and then I was going to add back in foods. At the 30-day mark, I told my husband I don't want to add anything back in. So I just had a little avocado and I didn't like it. It didn't appeal to me. I wanted to go back to my steak. At the beginning, the first 30 days, I ate anything. This is gross probably, but I said to people, I eat anything with eyeballs. So anything that has eyes that's not human, I'm sorry about that. That's gross and weird. I ate anything. And then today I was listening to, I think it was Emily. You had Emily Penton, I think her name is. I listened to her story today. And she said that she ate everything in the beginning too, but then she started to not have desire for chicken and all that other stuff. And I don't either. That went away. I really only crave red meat, ruminant meat. I want to have lamb. I haven't had that. So I'm now 316 days in. Like I said, I'm 5'4". I didn't do this for the weight this time, or for the vanity. The first time I lost a bunch of weight, it was for vanity reasons. I didn't want to play, Helga for the rest of my career. The second time I did it, it was because I wanted to get rid of inflammation, but it was still vanity. I still didn't like being that big. And this time, I didn't even want to weigh myself. But my husband said on day 2, you got to weigh yourself. You just have to. And I said, I don't want to weigh myself because I don't want anybody to think this is about weight. And so I did. And since that moment, I've lost 81 pounds in 316 days without trying. I did start to walk on April 15th. So I was 4 months in. When I started walking, I set a goal to walk to the office, which is 33 steps, and then walk back at least 5 times a day. And I did it. That worked up to, I'm going to walk to the English language arts room and come back. I'm a clerk now. I'm no longer a teacher. Then it worked my way to, I'm going to go to the gym at lunch. I'm going to walk around the gym until I can't walk. I walked 1 lap. Then I walked 2. In 15 minutes, I can do 19 laps now. I started to do more calisthenic kind of stretching in the morning. Been great. I was supposed to have knee surgery, didn't have to have my knee surgery. I had really bad knee pain too. I forgot to tell you about that. I just had so much pain. It's just, there's so many things I can't even list them all between. But I think the neuropathy and the thought that I might be doing some real damage with the sugar and the processed foods, that's what sent me over the edge. And seeing Michaela and then the doctor, he's the straw that broke the camel's back for as far as what God put in my path. That was because I'd been praying, God, send me somebody that has done this, that's human, not on a video. And he did. A guy I trusted. And so I saw him yesterday. I had a doctor's appointment with him yesterday. I made it yesterday on purpose because I hadn't seen him in a year. He didn't recognize me. And when I sat in his chair, normally I would take the whole chair up and I would touch side on this side of the chair and that side of the chair. But in his chair, I took up half the chair. And he didn't even know me. And we had such a nice conversation. And he's been 3 years carnivore. So there's my story.
Wow.
I
Um,
know.
so you're no longer on the CPAP?
No, I got off the CPAP And now I just mouth tape at night because I'm a mouth breather. And I read the book Breathe, and I loved it. And I do not have a CPAP. Love it.
Uh, That's fantastic. And
There.
so over these 316 days, how is the food noise?
Oh, I forgot about telling you about that. I, for the first time in 60 years of my life, do not obsess about food. You called it one time this chaos or something. You had a term for it, and I have it in my journal. And it just hit home for me. That's exactly what I felt all the time. I was in battle in my own head. I couldn't go to any function at all without obsessing about what food was on the tables and how I was going to sneak back and get some. I don't have that anymore. I can have it right in front of me. And I'm not going to lie and say I don't have any problems. I don't have a physical desire or physical noise. I just have I remember what that tastes like. And then I stop myself and hear your voice or I hear God's voice and I hear whoever's that I've listened to that day on your podcast say, and I don't know, there's somebody who said this, feel that taste of that. It won't ever feel as good as healthy feels. And I just call myself a junkie. Every day I'm a junkie. I'm not a junkie who's got a syringe and heroin. I just take it legally through sugar and processed stuff. And that's how I do it.
Yeah. It's amazing. And that chaos that's going on in your head, it's like this tug of war, and you're playing tug of war against the other side is just loaded with cupcakes and danishes and everything, and it's just so much heavier than you, and it's just going to win every time, and it just being carnivore gives you that space to kind of just step back a little bit and go, you know what? I need to properly think about this. I need to actually evaluate this situation rather than just, in the before times going, oh, the craving's hit. I'm just going to stuff it down my throat.
Exactly. I just had to come to the point where I had a why that made me cry. And I do. I do. Because there was a point in the 316 last 316 days that my husband was, because I also put my dogs on an all meat diet, as I felt so bad because I thought, wow, I got to get them off of grains and all this stuff. And he's like, we can't afford this. And I said, I just brought me to tears, and I don't cry easily. And I said, this is other than God, this is the next important thing for me. It goes God, it goes food, carnivore, and it goes my relationship with you. And those three are in that hierarchy. And I said, we're going to afford it if we have to sell everything. Because, meat in America, I don't know about it is in Japan, but here in the United States, especially where I live, we pay $25 a pound for a ribeye. And I love ribeye. So now I've taken to eating cube steak because it's $7.99, $8 a pound, and I just have to eat more of it. I have to put a lot of butter on it. So that's my why. My why, God put this in my path, and I give him all the glory. And he's giving me you. He gives me Kelly Hogan, of course, Chafee and Barry and Baker and Carrie Mann, and the whole crew. I watch them all. I faithfully watch you because you're my AA meetings. I wish I had a different name for it besides AA. Matthew McConaughey used to be my celebrity crush, and I think maybe you are now. So your wife has to forgive me. I'm always telling her.
So speaking, you talked about like you like the ribeyes, but now you're kind of going to the cube steak a little bit. What is your typical eating pattern during the day?
I was in the first 30 days, 45, 50 days, somewhere in there, I was ravished. So I ate 3 times a day, every day. I mean, bacon and eggs every single solitary morning. Then I would eat sardines and any piece of steak that was left over from the night before that I maybe didn't finish, and a hard boiled egg or two. because I listen to Kelly, and Kelly's like, feed yourself. I'm not feeding myself. And so then I went to ribeyes. I had my first ribeye. I didn't have a ribeye before. This was my first chance with the ribeye. I didn't know anything about steak other than my mom liked T-bones. She cooked a lot of T-bones. And I didn't know how to cook a steak, so I didn't want to waste money cooking steaks and ruin them, so I really didn't buy them. Plus, I was doing the whole lean meat thing for, 3 or 4 decades. So then I got into the ribeye thing, and Kyle's like, "We can't afford to eat ribeyes every night, Darla. We just can't." And I was like, "Well, I don't know what to tell you, but I don't want any more chicken. I don't like chicken." So the chicken went away. I rarely have that. Maybe if I'm out and that's all they have is some, grilled chicken, I'll have it, but it never satiates me. I just eat a lot of cube steak. So that went away after, 2 or 3 months in. I started to feel the need to just not eat all the time. I don't snack. So there's no snacking in the middle of the day. I usually now, literally took me 6 to 8 months to figure out that egg whites were a problem for me. Because the whole entire 316 days, until the last month, I was having bad issues with diarrhea. And I couldn't figure out what it was. I think it was Steak and Butter Gal who said something about the egg whites. I'm like, oh, egg whites. Maybe I'm having an egg white issue. So I did the whole elimination thing. Thought it wasn't egg whites. I couldn't figure it out. Finally figured out it was the egg whites. So now I don't eat any more scrambled eggs. I don't eat eggs anymore at all. Not even hard boiled, which I'm not sure if I could do that or not. I haven't tried it. I just have a steak, something from dinner the night before. I have it at lunch, somewhere around 11:30. I do eat bacon in the morning. Oh, and I do still have coffee, but I'm pretty much going to be giving that up January 1st, I think, because I'm having a lot of issues with nocturnal leg cramps. Now, I had them prior to carnivore, so I can't blame carnivore for them. But I do sometime in the night usually wake up 2 or 3 times with lower leg cramping and foot locking. That has not gone away. It did get better before carnivore when I took magnesium, but since carnivore, it's gotten a little worse. And I have to figure that out. And I think it's coffee. Because you had a guest on recently, and she said once she got rid of the coffee, the night cramping in the bottom of her legs went away. But golly, I don't know. Giving up coffee is, ooh, what an addiction. I'm gonna have to
Yeah,
pray about that.
it's a difficult one. Yeah, I
I'm,
know that.
I'm 2 meals a day
Mm, no,
and bacon
and sorry,
and bacon.
and bacon. And so has your husband taken this up?
Yes, he's down too, and he's off all his meds but one. He was on meds for blood pressure. He's off of. He's off of the ones for glucose, the ones for statins, I think. I don't know if I'm getting these all mixed up. And there's one more. That might be a baby aspirin. But he's off all meds. He's down about 30, 40 pounds and feels amazing. He has an appointment tomorrow, his annual appointment with his cardiologist. So we fully expect to get the whole your cholesterol, la, la, la. But I'm prepared. I've read Dr. Barry's book on meds. I'm prepared to ask for a CAC. I'm prepared to ask for a fasting insulin. I'm prepared to be everything. Kyle may not fight for that, but I'm going to be there in the corner going, we know it's going to be high. That's okay. But he's a little bit of a Nick Norowitz. He's not afraid to eat some carbs, so it might lay down some of that cholesterol for him.
Right. So your doctor was impressed slash shocked when he saw you. What about friends close to you? Have they noticed the change over the last year?
Wow, the friend thing, right? I do have one coworker friend who's just started to do keto. She's doing very well. She's down one size and she's very motivated. And she just started that. So maybe a little over 2 months, not quite 2 months ago, she started it. She's already down a size, feeling amazing. Everybody has noticed, but as soon as, like most of your guests, as soon as they hear what I actually do, then they go, oh yeah, I couldn't do that. No, that just makes me sick.
Yeah. I couldn't give up my pizza and cupcakes. I'd get scurvy.
You
It's,
get
yeah. Um, so, at this stage, you feel like there's no going back?
no. Oh no. Every day I thank God for, and I get up for a healing body that hasn't failed me no matter how abusive I've been to it. I just think, wow, God, you've done such a good job of creating me. Here I am, 61. I feel better than I've felt. I think I can outrun most people that I work with. And I love them all, but I'm pretty, for a 61-year-old, I'm pretty spry now. I don't even like the thought of it. And I think I forget that I ate like that. And I look at, like, I see people in the grocery store and I look at their food cart and I think, oh God, that was me. And I just say a little prayer for them. And I just think, gosh, there's nothing I can do. My kids, at first, I have 3 grown children, all 3 boys, and a daughter in law. She didn't say this, but the boys all thought I'm a nut job. They just think their mom, well, I've always been a nut job anyway. But now, though, my middle son, called me the other day from Florida and he's like, hey, mom, how many meds are dad off of? And I told him. He said, well, I was talking to so and so and so and so, and they're on all these meds. And I was telling them that my dad's not on them anymore and that my mom and dad are doing this all meat thing called the carnivore, blah, blah, blah. And he said, I think I'm going to try it. Or, he didn't say those words exactly, but he insinuated that he might try it. He's already, fit, but he eats a lot of lean meats and lots of vegetables because that's how he was raised. I raised him that way. So he's not horribly unhealthy, but I know that if they could feel what we feel, if they could feel this optimal, this vital, they won't go back, right?
Yeah. It's a testament to the human body that you can abuse it for many years with different things, and then shortly after stopping that abuse, it goes, "All right, well, I can start healing now because you're giving me the right stuff."
Exactly. You've had so many guests on that have said things like, oh, it's like I woke up in the middle of the night and I felt my body saying, thank you. That's a real thing. You don't think when before you start this, that's going to be a real thing. When I first started it, I said to Kyle one day, I said, you know what it feels like to me, Kyle? I feel like the character in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I'm the kid who got the golden candy bar. Nobody else got it. And I want to share it with everybody, but nobody wants it. But that feeling, that magic secret feeling that he had, I have that. Every day I wake up with that magic feeling and I have to pinch myself and go, yep, it's true. I feel great. I don't have any pain. I had these weird cysts that were benign that ran along my spine. There were like 4 or 5 of them. I couldn't even sit in a chair without them touching something and feeling pain. They're gone. They were gone. Within 3 months, they were gone. These weird benign cysts. Crazy.
It's pretty awful. I mean, it's great that you've got a doctor that understands this, right? But it's pretty awful that majority of people go through life developing these things, whether it be cysts or back pain or arthritis or all these things, and they just feel like, well, that's my lot in life. I'm just getting old. Where's the next set of meds that I've got to take to deal with this? And it's so bad that we just accept it.
Isn't that the truth? The whole thing where people are always saying on your show, they're always saying, I thought it was old age. I just thought it was part of growing old. I thought it was part of my genetics. That is such a lie. We don't have to believe that anymore. And I just want to shout. And of course, at the beginning, I was a zealot and I probably offended a whole bunch of people. Sorry, people. but I just wanted to shout it because I feel like a firefighter and I see this fire and I can't put it out. And I can literally, I have the water. I have the dang water and you won't let me put it out.
It's yeah, it's like you've got the water, but there's some kind of state state line restriction that you can't actually use the water to help the people that you know are burning to death.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if you had a friend come to you and say, "Okay, look, I see how well you're doing. You've lost weight, you look healthy, you look like you've got more energy. I want to give carnivore a try for 90 days. Tell me what to do." What advice would you give them based on your experience?
Right. I knew you were going to ask this. So I was trying to be prepared with it. For days, I've been asking myself this question. One time you had a guest and he said, at the beginning, he would give them advice, but then they wouldn't do it. And he finally just started saying, "You don't want this. I know you don't." There's a big part of me that just wants to be bitter like that and say, "Oh, you know, this is not for you." But I would never do that. I would first ask them why and what's your motive? Because maybe you want to, look into it. I would try to encourage them, look into this. I just jumped in cold turkey and I dealt with a whole lot of what I now know, didn't know at the time, oxalate clearing. Thank you to Sally Norton's book. I've read that too. And I got, for the first time in the first 3 months, and I never told anybody this because I didn't want my family to get up in an uproar about it and get their panties in a wad and make me quit. So I was getting boils. I've never had a boil in my life. But Kelly Hogan was talking about how before she was carnivore, she got boils. And I'm like, to myself, I'm thinking, I have boils. These are boils. They would come and they would just blow up on my chest, especially, and then they would go away. And then I would get this other one here and there and everywhere. I just start getting them everywhere, and they would itch too. They would itch and then they would boil up and then they would go away. I was getting a lot of eyes, sty. I don't know if they're called styes, but like crud, but it was different. It wasn't like dust or anything. It was like rooted, where I would pill at it and I'd be like, ah, it feels like I got a root stuck in there, like pulling it. Come to find out that was oxalic acid from whatever chocolate, probably, because chocolate was my drug of choice. Not really spinach, not really, the other high oxalate foods. That's when of course, I found out Dr. Chafee at that point, and the whole plants thing. So now I'm like, thank God I don't have to eat another vegetable for the rest of my life. And I just did a whole lot of oxalate. I'm still having some oxalate clearing on occasion. I'll get real fatigued for a day or two, and I know that's my body going through a process of clearing something. I haven't been sick except for the very first quarter of this. Like somewhere in the beginning, I got a cold, but otherwise, I fought off every other virus that's been going around the school. And I work in an elementary school, so there's a lot. Everybody else is sick around me, and my body's just fighting it. And I'm so thankful. I keep thanking God every day. Because I had pneumonia and I fell so many times. I had to go to the ER for falling, and I didn't break any bones. I had some strong bones. I don't know how come my strong bones are so strong. Probably because of athletics. And I got off track with that comment, but I would just tell them, I can be here for you. Do it for 30 days. What is it you got to lose? You can always go back to your standard American diet, Frankenfood. You can do it, but try it for 30 days. But most people can't give up their pizza. Like, I thought about it too. I don't hold anything against them because when I've thought about doing this, I was only going to do it 30 days and then I was going to add back in my pizza and stuff. I mean, my whole life has been pizza one night a week, some kind of chili, some kind of taco, some kind of stir fry, a chicken breast here and there to make myself feel like I'm, eating healthy. What a farce that was.
Yeah. Um, so DJ, if people want to reach out to you, is there any way that they can get in contact?
I do not have a lot of social media. I don't even know what my social media would be. I did. I put my email in? I did reach out to a couple of your guests. I reached out, messaged All for Jesus Carnivore, I think is her name,
Oh, yeah, Helen.
Helen, because I'm writing a book, Meat for the Body, Manna for the Soul. It's a devotional for women about like a 90-day devotional, and I would just love to feature her testimony. I contacted somebody else, so I would love to hear from anybody if they want to email me any questions. I still have tinnitus, so if anybody has any, I have a little bit of tinnitus here. It's gotten better. If anybody has any advice, I'll troll your comments and get back. I will. Would love to figure out the night thing without giving up coffee. I know that's bad. It's a plant. I don't feel so bad. I know a lot of people do coffee.
No worries. I'll include your email in the show notes. DJ, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I really appreciate your time.
It is my honor to be on the same podcast with you. And, you're really our hero for sharing all our stories and all of our craziness and getting off task and I'm like, I'm going to get there and I'm not going to circle back. I'm going to just get in there and drive. And then I'm like, I'm not going to forget anything. I forgot my notes on my desk at work because I had little note cards. I'm like, I'm not going to forget to say this. But the Lord led me, and I'm really happy to give him all the credit, and you.